Introduction, Eva.
Oh. I think we're good. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everyone out there. Welcome to Crown Between Two Roses. This awesome day, I'm joined by Countess Beatrice, and today we will be speaking to the Crown Prince and Princess of Atenveldt, His Highness Czypser and Her Highness Mineko. So, Beatrice, if you'd like to kick us off.
Certainly, thank you for that. At the beginning of every interview, we do our acknowledgement of country. So, good nobles, we come here together in a spirit of fellowship, deepening of our skills, sharing our knowledge, and a shared interest in the search to find truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Countess Beatrice Maria Malatesta, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather. We recognise their continuing connection to land and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Your Highnesses. We're very excited to have you on the show.
Well,
Thank you.
We're stoked. Mineko's been getting ready for like 3 hours, so.
I'm a preparation person because I am terminally tardy. So I figured the last thing I should be is late when all I had to do is, commute to my kitchen.
Yeah, show up to our kitchen. That was
After a year and a half, you would have so much practice at that, I imagine.
It's going to be weird when I have to actually go to an event.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I think we've only had quarantine for a year. It feels like longer.
It does. But my
So,
house looks great.
To get things kicked off, you're from the Kingdom of Atenveldt. So did you want to give everyone just a quick overview of where that is and maybe some of your favorite traditions or peculiar things about your kingdom?
Sure. Do you have words that you want to say first?
I can say where it is. That's easy. So basically, Atenveldt is Arizona, which makes it super simple. There's some pieces, I think, where like Caid comes in and where the Outlands come in, but for the most part, if it's in Arizona, it's part of Atenveldt. So
the Shire of Ironwood Lock used to be in Blythe, California, but I don't believe there's any current participants in that shire. The last two I'm aware of moved up to Payson, Arizona, or oh my gosh, Arid Soul. And so I think that shire has gone dormant. But we have Yuma, which is just in that borderland. And I don't think we have anybody in New Mexico. I think our closest is Snowflake, which is still in Arizona.
So is it very hot and deserty?
For the most part, our primary lands are desert. Tucson has a mountain called Mount Lemmon, which actually has like 7 ecological zones within a 50-minute drive. And so that's really weird. But for most of our state, we are in arid desert. And we do have Arid Soul and Granite Mountain and our dog. But no, those are mountainous lands, and Flagstaff is up to a mile high. So very similar terrain to Denver.
Oh.
Wow. Do you have a concentration of your populations in like major cities, or is it quite spread out over the state?
Where we live is a tri-baronial area. So within an hour, you can drive across 3 baronies, and that's our hugest population center. Second to that, of course, is Tucson, which is our probably second largest population in the state, and that's the barony down there is Triskether, and it has a very active college as well as the barony.
Yeah, it's actually one of the more active colleges I've ever seen. It's really cool. There's a lot of kids that come out of there, and I say kids, but they're not much younger than I am. But it's one of those, like, it's a lot of fun. I mean, in our area, it's really nice. There's a lot of people. We go up north and you get sometimes you get snow, which is cool. It reminds me of home. I grew up in the Outlands. And then we get to go down there, and it's just, the college that I went to didn't have there weren't a lot of people there. And that may have been partially my fault. Like, I didn't help very much at that point. But it's just really cool to see like the support group down there for that college, and how many people come out of that and how many people tend to stay. It's just it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they have a very good thriving youthful group, and Arizona as well, which is the Northern Arizona University, has a good youthful group as well.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
probably
that is
a really good segue, because I know Czypser, you did an interview with the sisters with your brother earlier last year, but if you could tell us both your SCA origin stories, that would be amazing.
All right. Let's see. So my whole family plays, and my dog plays. She's mad right now.
It up.
She's talkative. Apologize. So my whole family plays, which is my mom, who is Countess Mage from the Outlands. My father, Count Robert, or Bobby, everyone calls him. And then my little brother, who's a knight. His name is Gabe. He's up in Idaho. And my little sister, who is just turned 17. She's pretty young, and her name is Morgan. But she's out in the Outlands with my parents. But yeah, so I grew up in the Outlands. I grew up in around Denver, kind of the middle of Colorado-ish, and it was a very cool upbringing. I mean, it was just neat. Like I read a lot of medieval books when I was younger, and that was stuff that interested me. And so, like, my dad got invited to an event from a guy who was at work, and he went to that event. I don't remember what event it was, and I remember him having like an okay time. And then he came back and he was like, all right, and he's telling us about it. Me and my brother were like, this is so freaking cool. And we were like 11, 12, 14, something like that, around those ages. And so, yeah, we went to the event and it was awesome. Like our very first event, we made like, I don't know, like 15 like foam swords, and we just ran around beating kids up, and we were playing capture the flags in the woods, and the adults left us alone, and that's exactly how we wanted it. So so it was just really cool. And like from then on we were hooked. My dad's first event, is even his second event, like we had a blast and we had a great time, but my dad was like, whatever. But because we had so much fun, he was like, all right, well, we'll just keep going. And it was just, for me, it's cool because I got to grow up with these kind of legends and heroes of people in the SCA, and like build my own moral structure based on that. Like, all right, well, this is, in the SCA, we believe in chivalry. That's what we do, so like it was just, I don't know, it gave me a good grounding, I felt, as a human being. So yeah, and I was in the Outlands until about 8-10 years ago.
And Zip and his brother were both knighted at 21, so they were incredibly young peers, and they have a group of them that all were knighted at that age, and it's really interesting now to see them in their later years, but still be considered young peers, and the fun that they bring to our group. I only found the SCA 11 years ago now, so 2010. And for me, I was already a full-fledged adult with, real work, real job, came in with hobbies and social skills and all the things I already wanted to do. So for me, I came in and joined because I thought it was really cool that people actually use ceramic things and didn't just put them up on a shelf. And I thought it was really great that I could run around and go to parties, and I could walk home at the end of the night if I wanted, when I was done. And I just thought it was a really fun social structure. And then when I got into fighting a year and a half later, I was done. I was hooked. So I'll probably never leave. And then, as far as Atenveldt goes, I took some notes because I actually, there's a chronicle that I went and looked at, and it's like, it started in September of 79. They had their first fighter practice 2 months later. Like once the SCA got into Atenveldt, it got hooks and never stopped. I mean, the chronicle is just like year after year, like all these milestones that happen. It was really great. And as Eva would probably be interested in, Dennis of the Titans and Sir Trudy were the ones that pushed to allow females to fight in the SCA. Yeah. And they started that in 74, and the full, he's gonna go help our dog not lose her mind while we're talking. But and then they got it full bod passed, by 76, and Trudy was knighted by 77. So
yeah, that's incredible.
go Atenveldt for all of that. And it's just, it's interesting to be the fourth kingdom. We were the first one that had a non-directional name. So that was really, groundbreaking, and just rolled out from there.
It's still an A name, so everyone else takes after you, right?
Yeah, there's a song, rather, the Flower of the Desert, that we're referred to as the Father of Kingdoms, because there was the West, there was the East, the Middle, and then everything else was Atenveldt. And so all the things that split off from that, we got that name from that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting that the sort of shared experience of, so my fiance and I were both kids that joined the SCA. Felix, his family joined for him, and mine, I got dragged along. And once I found the fighting, or rather the heavy fighting, I was hooked. That was it. And there's not a lot. I mean, you hear it more often than not, but it is still quite rare to find people who grew up in the SCA. But I agree with you. I think that the culture that we permeate, and learning about chivalry and about having a moral code that you are responsible for, I think that's huge for kids. I think it does breed really good people and good citizens. So good for us.
We did it. We made it through. I will say though, the hardest parts about being a kid in the SCA is being 14 to 16, especially if you're somebody that is really interested in fighting. Those 2 years are the worst, because there's not a lot of other kids that age. And so me and my brother, we would gather all the kids up, and again, we would just bring oodles of foam weapons so they could beat the heck out of each other. But I mean, we had to make our own fun at that point. And then when I turned 16, Gabe kind of disappeared for a little bit, because he was I can't fight, what am I gonna do? So, but it is, I don't know. I think any kids that make it through that barrier of going from a teenager to an adult, that's a struggle sometimes.
Yeah. You're right, because there is kind of that gap if you're, depending on what your interests are, that you're too big to play boffer with the little kids, but you're not big enough to actually, wield rattan yet. So, I mean, hopefully, youth combat will become a bigger thing over here. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's a challenging time.
Yeah, one of the things that we've noticed amongst our youth is we actually lose them between the ages of 13 to 17. Yeah, that's that target area, unless they're interested in rapier, in fencing, because you can start doing it then. And even though they can start training at 14 for armored combat, it's the difference between training and actually going out and authorizing is so different. Yeah.
And it's the age of fencing, is it, I think it's 14 here.
14.
Is it 14 there? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in him and his brother's case, it's they weren't small kids, they're both of them, I'm sure, were bigger at 18 than I am now at 43. So
Probably.
And in the Outlands, so they do have a very healthy rapier culture across the board. I think that it's probably one of the most well-respected rapier, within their kingdom, rapier cultures that I've seen in all the kingdoms I've traveled to, because everybody fights rapier. I mean, I don't know a hard suit fighter, I don't think, in the Outlands that hasn't at some point been on the rapier field. And I don't think I can say that, here. I think here our rapier community, while very healthy, it's not as involved across the board.
There's not a lot of cross-pollination. And I will say, there's a lot of fencers, I think, that come across and do heavy fighting. And we've seen that more recently. We've had, a couple of our masters come across and fight and do very well. And it's a lot of fun seeing that, but we don't get a lot of the other direction. And I wish I knew how to spread the love for that a little more, because it's just, there's so much to learn, and it's I think it makes the community so much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, they're all related art forms. There's only so many ways to use a sword.
Yeah.
I am a heavy fighter, and my knight well, my granddaddy knight, as I call him. He loves it. Suggested that I take up fencing because we were fighting glaive, and it's amazing just for that point work and for the footwork involved. Yeah, so definitely crossing those forms.
Yeah, my rapier champion Rabbit is a phenomenal spearman. Like I hadn't seen him fight because he had I believe it's a vehicle or motorcycle accident, something that happened. He has a bunch of plates in his arm, and so he had given up the heavy field primarily, and he's an incredibly talented rapier fighter. But this last Australia, he got to fight alongside me, and I was like in awe. I was like, I want this spearman next to me all the time. Because we have a household of incredibly talented fighters, and so for him to like come up on the line and keep up with the dukes and the knights in our household and then just slay mightily, I was so freaking pumped because I'm a shield person. So I love a really effective spearman next to me. It made my war, honestly.
All right, B, you're up.
Well, I was just going to ask, so as Prince and Princess, is this your first reign?
Yeah.
And boy, what did
yeah, wow.
We did it.
So when did you win the Crown Tourney?
February of last year.
Right, but yeah,
Wow.
about a month before Australia last year.
Yeah, and it was kind of neat. There was a lot, and not to like make it about me, but I'm gonna make it about me for just a second. I got offered my laurel like right before that, like a couple events before that, and then we won crown, which was really cool. So
you're
a lot all at once.
Your laurel still.
Mm.
Wow.
Well, and I ended up we ended up at Australia doing that ceremony. So it was kind of cool, but it was like a really weird scenario where I'd never seen that scenario, I think, before, where the king was like, and we're gonna offer you a peerage, type of thing. And so it was kind of fun. It was different.
That's so cool.
That is awesome. I think I've seen it happen once here where the Crown Prince was elevated to his knighthood just before he was crowned.
That's cool.
So he
yeah, we've had that happen here, but also Atenveldt has a very proud, one of our many traditions is they've never had an unbelted crown. So the only one that I'm aware of that, and I'm sure there may be more in the elder history, but Duke Edward, he was knighted between his crown tournament and his step up, his first reign. So he stepped up as a crown.
Is that just big? It's just something that's happened that way.
I don't know like the full history and like that. I hear it was kind of like a thing that was going to happen previously, but I don't know. I wasn't there. But yeah, other than that, I think Ed is the only example of anybody who has won, even won as a squire.
Yeah.
So
the way I hear the knights tell it, because I'm not a member of the circle, is that if you're good enough to win crown in this kingdom, you can rule it, and as a knight, and that then it's the order's duty to ensure that you do it well as a knight. So that was kind of the early explanation to me, and I may be kind of mangling that quote. It was 10 years ago, asking all the new questions, like, tell me more. But that was how it was explained to me. I see Kelly, Duke Deaton is on the chat, so he may correct me in the comments, but
we don't expect you to know
that does
all
happen quite a bit.
Politics.
Dean will keep me honest in this conversation, I'm sure.
Oh man.
I definitely wanted to ask, because it's really unprecedented that you have both been waiting to step up now you've had a year of prep, and I'm aware that reigns are expensive, but you've had a year to make things and to plan. So with all of the extra time, are you going to be the most opulent king and queen ever, or are you making more?
When you have garb by Sir Valora, you'll never, but no, we are very lucky because Sir Valora is she deals with life by crafting. And so with all the time that she's had, we'll look very, very good. And we have Countess Gilliana here and Countess Dionysia, who are also like our mistresses of the robe. And I'm sure that we will come out of this just looking fantastic. Poor Gilly left with like 20 pounds of fabric yesterday. So we are very excited to step up. But as a group, the Crowns, Morgan and Elizabeth, and our Seneschal, Mistress Rowan, we had some early on conversations of, how long do we think this is going to last? Rowan's a nurse, and so she had her finger very much on the pulse of this being a pandemic that could go on for a while, because she got to see all the numbers coming through her hospital very early on. So probably more than anyone, we were prepared for the realities of this being a long haul thing. And we decided that for our kingdom, given the unique opportunity we had, because the bod hit that point of, we're going to call the SCA paused as a whole right before our due date of step up, or it doesn't matter, it's going to be online, you're transitioning. It was like a week and a half, 2 weeks before that date that they put everything on pause. So we didn't have to change over. And we decided as the 5 of us that we like the optic of 5 people making the choices for our kingdom as a group, with a healthcare professional, people that have reigned a handful of times, and ourselves as working professionals, and people that, yes, we want to have the reign and we would love our moment in the sun, but the reality is our populace has to be safe. The day that he won crown, I had what, I was so worried was a very kind of stern conversation with our populace in court, because I had 2 friends that had cancer as part of my support group. One was suffering from her 2nd round of breast cancer, the other had thyroid cancer. And I was looking at the reality of having 2 people that were going to be very close to me that were going to be immune impaired. And so I had the conversation with, like, we're very much looking forward to serving this kingdom, but if you are sick, we cannot afford to endanger people around us. And we don't know what people are going through, and there's immune compromised people. So be really careful coming into flu season, what we thought was just going to be a regular flu season, about staying home if you're sick, because there's no SCA event that's worth, endangering someone with the flu if they're going through chemo or whatever's happening. And probably a week or 2 later, someone got influenza A that had been at that event, and they think they contracted the influenza A at the event. And we're in the hospital in coma for almost 2 weeks. And so I had been so nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, my first conversation with our populace. And I just talked to them like they're children about staying home if you're sick. And I was so stressed about it. And then I got the word that this woman was in the hospital for 2 weeks in a coma. I was like, maybe that wasn't the worst conversation to have. And then COVID hit. I'm like, well, now I definitely don't feel bad about that. But man, what a, kind of slap of reality to have a pandemic. I mean,
and as a side note, that lady is actually doing good now. Before we veer too far.
Yeah, but it was just such a health scare of oh, well, okay, I don't feel so bad anymore.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. There are, when you're crowned, you're obviously the most public figure in the kingdom, and sometimes when you're used to your humble existence, it is very daunting and anxiety triggering to be I have to talk to everyone in the kingdom from this position, basically sometimes like they're children, but sometimes it pays off. Remember, you have that point of authority. You are allowed to tell us that we need to stay home.
Yeah, especially when you have the seneschal's backing.
Yes. And so, we're the only crowns that went into this with heirs that haven't transitioned. And I think we're in a very unique position. And, I'm very happy that we've been able to do this. And, not that I think Kaid made the choice, right? Because the crown of Kaid that just stepped down, she's a nurse. And so she finished nursing school as queen and was working, I think 60 to 80 hours a week during a pandemic as queen. She's like, no, I can't. I just can't anymore. And her Grace Tahira, deserves all the applause across the known world for doing all that. It's phenomenal. I mean,
it's quite
Sorry, go ahead.
interesting the number of queens who are nurses at the moment. Yeah, because there are quite a few still up on the thrones that are in that profession, and all the admiration for the amount of work that they do in that space, and to have the dual role.
Oh, for sure. Like, I can't imagine how stressed they go to work every day and come home. And then, granted, there's not a whole lot going on, but just maintaining even the emotional, well-being of a very large group of people, and trying to keep, the artists involved, and, people that are doing the various fighter, clinics online, and figuring out ways to offer their classes, and it's mind-blowing how the content has been so amazing through all of this. He barely internets as a millennial. I'm, I can watch stuff, but I'm not really great at like making things, which is funny because I was a social media officer for like years and years and years. But that was just a very selfish thing as a new person. Like, I just wanted to be able to grab all the information in one place, and I used Facebook. So I wanted all the information to be on Facebook. So that was everything I did in service, was self-serving to like make information available and not have it affect my events. So finding service that worked for me. And, but having all these people thrust into that role to be online content creators is phenomenal, and bless them all for, giving me that touch point in the SCA for all this time.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to turn the conversation a little bit towards your personas.
Because he's got one.
Yeah. As you did mention, Mineko, that you like learning things and absorbing everything. So it may not be a part of your persona, but what interests do you have, and culturally and time-wise?
I am a time flitting butterfly. So I like the things that like make an outfit and like zhuzh it to make it look as period as possible. But I'm not the best at the full like research. I don't do the deep dives, but I rely on my friends that love that, and that's their interest level to inform me so that I may do it the best on the surface. And I enjoy ceramics for my art. I have learned how to sew under duress only because I wanted to look nice, but it is definitely not the art form that drives me. But I will craft along with my friends like nothing else. But I am not going to create the very complicated garments and finish all the seams all on my own doing. I definitely like need them to go like this to do all of that. But yeah, I came in with clay, so it's a really good trading item. So I like to trade.
She's a clay merchant.
Yes, basically I was like, do you like cup? I make you cup. Do you want to make me trim? I like trim. That's pretty much how that goes.
I get you. I think that's one of the best things about the SCA is that we do have such a broad time frame of like, if you don't want to specialize, you don't have to. You can literally just wear whatever outfit you like at the time. And I'm all for that. I'm with you.
Yes. But this guy, on the other hand, is way more interested in particular time periods. So
which is kind of odd, because when I first moved here, I had what I called early period outlands, which is kind of just a generic like Viking tunic sort of dude, and that's just kind of how I rolled, and it was a lot of fun. And then I moved here, and it is hot as the sun sometimes, and I decided that I could no longer wear pants or long sleeve tunics, and so I was like, well, I'll go Greek. Maybe Greek, that could be fun. They wear two rectangles, you sew them together, you make some chitons. And so like what I try to go for most of the time is like really early Thracian, like around the time of Alexander the Great, because there seems to be a little bit of documentation around there, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure I mess a lot of it up, but it is fun, and I stay cool in the sun. So
Nice. So are you guys planning to have like a theme for your rain? Do you match? Do you do all the things, or?
I think our theme for the rain is going to be welcome back. Because I think it's just going to be, honestly, we're going to be so happy to see people that I don't think we're going to worry about theme. I think that our clothes will be primarily Grecian to Thracian, just because that's what he wants to wear. And since I don't have as strong opinions, we'll just, float around that and then see what people are interested by. And, I have a lot of fabric and inspired friends, so I'll be fortunate no matter what we wear.
and Laura just keeps making stuff. So like, I'm both thankful and astonished with the amount of stuff that she has made, because my wardrobe has probably doubled. And like, I'm not kidding. Like, I make a lot of, like, I just take 2 rectangles, I sew them together, I put some stamping on them. I'm like, sweet, that's my chitin. And Valora's like, oh, you want stamping? And like, I mean, I'm like, it's ridiculous, right? Like,
and then you end up head to toe. But
Yeah.
I think it's been fun for her too, because she gets to look at the vases and the images, and it's, it's like a little picture guidebook to how to look Greek and Thracian. It's delightful. How nice of them to have drawn everything out for us.
Yeah. Absolutely. I assume that the length of the chitin is really important, because we had one early Greek rain, and I will say that there were some choices made by members of the populace that maybe I wouldn't have made.
Length is very, very important.
So I still wear shorts, right? Because I am not like a cat. Like, I will fall over. Like, I'm a kind of a klutz sometimes, and like, I just like running around. So not wearing pants is probably not really an option for me. So I just go with the short chitin. And then I like, my favorite thing in the world is you can go on Amazon, and this is totally like, they're called tie pants, and they're just like short, little longer, little longer than shorts, little shorter than capris or whatever. And they have a pocket. You just tie them around your waist, and they're like $7 whole. So I have a whole bunch of those.
Yeah, we went on vacation to Thailand, and when we were shopping around, because they'd all stopped in like a little bar in the middle of this marketplace, and Dionysia and I are like, well, these are neat. They're like $3 a pair. They were like Thai fisherman shorts. Yeah. And they're one size fits all. So we just grabbed like this huge like pile of them and like threw them at the guys. We didn't know that we were going to basically give them the easy out for short/pants for the rest of their SCA careers. Man. I vaguely regret it, except I wear them also, so I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. High pants at the wobbly age.
I feel you. I have. Yeah. I wear underneath my garb what I call my brays, but they're not standard materials. So I've got octopus print and cherries and
that's
Hello
amazing.
Kitty.
I love Hello Kitty. You just spoke to the Japanese in me. I just got really happy. It's like you said Hello Kitty, and it was like an automatic response. I'm like, yay, Hello Kitty.
I call it my quirk. It is one of my little quirks that, just wearing something different. Because you're all period on the outside, and then you have this big anachronism happening.
Yeah.
You gotta have fun, right?
Yeah.
We all do this all the time. So when you return, I am a big fan of different like SCA songs, and I know a lot of kingdoms have very meaningful songs. So when you get back, what's your favorite song? What's the first one you're going to find a bard and, ask them very nicely to sing for you?
Well, I already mentioned Flower of the Desert, and that is definitely like a song that you'll hear across the kingdom as well as the Outlands, because it's just very meaningful for our like arts community, our,
And that's Darany, right?
I don't
I think
know.
Mistress Darany wrote that. I might be wrong.
I think it's older than Darany.
I don't think so.
Deaton, tell us in the comments.
Deaton will know.
Yeah, Deaton will tell us in the comments. But and then Thomas Winterborn in the Outlands is an amazing songwriter, and Gray Bearded Night is one of my favorite SCA songs. And when you guys come to Estrella or some event, even if it's Penzic, we will find someone that knows the song, because I can't remember lyrics to save my life.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
I won't put you on the spot and go sing it for us now. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
we'll get Derek Barrick or Roland. We'll find someone, and we will like go through a Thomas catalog. If he isn't there himself, if he is there himself, he'll forget his lyrics too. So we'll still need a helper.
I think for me, I've got like two people in the SCA that I absolutely love to hear sing. One of them happens to be my best friend who plays banjo. His name is Barrick, but I call him Tier because he was Tier first and now he's Barrick. And the other person is Adelaide from Callantyre. And that lady has a voice that just like rattles your chest. And it is the coolest. Like, I love listening to her sing. Like, I'll be just trolling around at an event and it's just like homing beacon. Adelaide is singing. Must go see Adelaide. And yeah, she writes her own songs. And she did like a CD not too long ago, which was really cool. But yeah, she's one of my favorite singers ever.
Yeah,
so.
and if we can throw a couple cocktails into Laura, that woman's got a voice.
Oh yeah, she's
but
a good
she
singer.
too has singing Tourette's when she forgets lyrics, which is delightful.
She's terrified. She's like super stage fright about singing, and so you definitely have to give Laura a little schnockered before you get any good songs out of her.
Isn't that when you do your best singing?
Yeah,
Part of the ritual.
she does.
So you've both been playing for a little while. What would be one of your favorite moments that you've had as a part of the SCA?
Oh man, you wanna go? I gotta think. I got like twice as many years as you.
That's fair. Some of my favorite moments. Oh my gosh. Every time I see the Lion of Atenveldt bestowed, does that count every single time that it's a favorite moment? Melissa of Monster Hall received her lion and her offer of pelican within like 2 breaths. So she was like completely broken from the one, like took that like, okay, like I'm gonna compose myself moment, and then they slapped the other thing down, and I think it went lion, then the pelican offer, and she just like was beside herself with the emotions of it. And it was one where the lion is typically one of the last pieces of business of the day. So then she received her pelican from the next crown, their graces Ailenon and Amber. And it's just like everybody coming together for that, because she was such a servant of the kingdom who was getting ready to move. And so it was like totally like to get those 2 huge things like on the pathway to her becoming a member of the Outlands was just, I think it was so telling that you become a peer of the society when you are getting that thing, like even like the Atenveldt's like, nope, we're gonna do this because you were a peer of society. It doesn't matter that you're moving to another kingdom. And it's, you know, Atenveldt and the Outlands are so close as it is, and it's such a similar culture because, you know, the roots are the same, even though the kingdoms are so different kind of feels once you're there. I think a lot of the pieces are just so close. So I think that's one of my favorites.
You
did, come on.
I know I had a lot of time, but I was listening too. So
you or whatever.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I mean, the SCA to me is such like a magical place. And I love so much about it. But I think as someone like who grew up in the game, there's a couple like I think of my own little personal milestones that are really cool for me. One was when my mom was offered her pelican. One of the first things I ever got to make in metal was her pelican medallion. And so, I mean, it's huge. Like it's a hubcap
It's amazing.
It's amazing, right? But I mean, that was what, 5 or 6 years ago, and that was really kind of what put me on my path towards my laurel. Was working with Sir Casca on that stuff. And another like really neat thing was being there when my brother got offered knighthood. And then being able to, like, our household has a tradition where your knight gets to give you the buffet. And so at the time, who was, I think my knight was Prince, but he was given, basically he had asked, he said, hey, this is our thing, can I give the buffet or whatever? And then my brother actually asked if I would do it, and so I got to punch my brother, which was really cool. Yeah, punch. It was the worst, like, cool, very cool moment, like in theory, like it looked really cool on TV, type of thing. But it was the worst. I've never punched another human being before. Like, the weakest punch ever, and he just like looked at me like that was it, right? Like, I give you the buffet.
But it makes for a great story for the rest of our lives.
Oh man, yeah. I like wound up. I like looked him right in the eye, and I was like, I'm gonna hit you so hard in the chest that I'm gonna stop your heart. And then I just like punched him with my wrist and like completely missed. It was horrible. Like, so much suspense. And then I just like limp wristed it, but it was just
one shot.
Literally just sort of freeze.
I really wanted to like hit him so hard that he fell over, and I just blew it. Like, it was so terrible.
So there's this fabulous story where Gabe ranted one night because they used to go to the Callantyre Northern like war maneuvers or winter war maneuvers, because I haven't been, but I've heard the story like 100 times, so it works.
Yeah.
But Gabe was yelling at him how Czypser didn't love him.
We were having a very nice conversation about virtues, and that's something like my knight was always really good at. He was like, you guys are idiots. We're gonna beat the virtues into you, and like, whether you know what they are or not, like, you're gonna live by them. And so we were talking about virtues, and like chivalry came up, and like, I hope Gabe is listening to this because he's a giant moron. So chivalry comes up, and everyone's like going around. It's like, well, what does it mean to you? Like, what is it? What's the historical sense of it? What's your personal sense? And then we're talking about virtues, and my brother just like looks around, and he's like, and he was a little drunk. Like, I'll give him that. He was a little drunk, and my brother's he's got a lot. There's a lot of energy with him. And he just goes, I'm pretty sure that we only need 2 virtues. No, it was 1 virtue. 1 virtue.
Prowess.
No, 2. So it was
chivalry.
Prowess and chivalry. There's there's being good as a person and being good as a fighter, and there's not being a dick about it, right? Like, that was his whole like those are the 2 virtues you need. Yeah, and that was right. And then out of nowhere, he like looks me right in the eye, and he's like, you know what? You're the worst brother ever. And I was like, what? Like, I'm just sitting here completely sober. Like, I'm not even on the same train he's on, talking about virtues. He's like, you're the worst brother ever. And I was like, all right, tell me why. Like, how did we get here? Like, what's, and he goes, no, you never punched me in the face as a kid. Like, I deserved it. You just never, ever punched me in the face as a kid. And like, this is where everybody asks, like, well, did you punch him in the face? No, I didn't punch him in the face. That's exactly what he wanted. And so like, yeah, like all of this was like years before the whole Buffett thing. And then the Buffett thing came up, and Bela was like, or Gabe asked me to do it. Bela was like, sure, do it. Cool. And then it was the worst Buffett ever. So like,
as Bela has said, he's still pissed that he gave up that chance.
Yeah, he gave up his free hit on my little brother.
I have to say, in the chat, apparently Sir Valora said that Gabe is still pissed that you don't love him.
No,
Yeah,
he still is convinced I don't love him. Yeah, because that's what he said. He goes, you never hit me, you never loved me. And I was like, that's not how I show my love. Like, I'm a pretty nice dude.
I'll be honest, as an aside, like, I've delivered 2 buffets, and it actually is quite a daunting task. And one I delivered well, and then the next time I got over cocky and knights in our second reign. And so I asked the vigilant knight, well, who would you like to receive your buffet from? He goes, no, it doesn't matter, surprise me. And I accidentally like hit him at the top of his head, like in the ear. It was awful. So, just it is difficult. And I should say, because I know buffets are kind of a hot topic at the moment, that buffets are consensual, they shouldn't hurt, all of the things. If you have questions, ask your local knight, because it is quite a meaningful part of the ceremony. So that's the thing, when you well up with all of this motion, he put you on the spot. I get it.
Yeah.
It's about humility. So maybe he should be humble and just accept the buffet that he got.
That's not his virtue.
That's not humility, being humble, like that's not his thing.
I think that you delivered the buffet that was needed then.
Yeah, Bela, Your Majesty.
It taught him a lesson,
I think Nikita's offered up to be the person in which Czypser gets to practice his buffets, so he doesn't.
That's a 400-pound dude. You're not gonna hurt him, so I'm not even afraid to punch him.
It'll be fine. We'll figure it out. We got more time.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, that derailed a little bit, but that was a lot of like I love spending time with my family and my brother, and not just him, everybody's cool. Like my mom's cool, my little sister, my dad, like I love hanging out with them. So a lot of like my favorite stories are really about that. So, and I will say, like, probably the one last thing, and I'll make it real short, is Mineko had mentioned, like, I think this was before the call, but we have a group of us that have got either knighted really young or our second generation knights. And so one thing when I got knighted is the guy that I really looked up to, Sir Zachariah, gave me a chain that he'd won in like a Boffer tournament when he was really young. And he was the youngest knight prior to myself in the Outlands, the youngest person to get knighted. And he was just this icon to me. And he's like, now we're best friends. And even then we were really close, but he gave me this chain and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So then Gabe got offered knighthood. And then I passed the chain on to Gabe. So that was 3 of us. And then Xerxes wore it for a little while in Palantir. And then we just gave it to Germanicus, who is another second gen out of the Outlands. And so it's just
all of them were knighted at 21. And it's just amazing that, they've all found each other, become this like network, but also that for each of their respective kingdoms, Artemisia now for Gabe. And by the way, Artemisians love Gabe. He is a great knight. But I think, sometimes you have to move away from your home group or your family for people to recognize truly like how a phenomenal peer you become. But Xerxes and Germanicus, it's like they all and Zachariah work for making sure that it is fun, it is inviting, that there's something to do in the middle of the day. If we're not fighting, then what?
Yeah.
So it's great.
I'm very curious, for being knighted so young and now being ultimately a young crown, how has being a double peer and going into that affected how you play the game?
I think when I first got knighted, it really affected my game in a sense where I was absolutely terrified that I was going to ruin it for my little brother, right? Or my best friend, right? Tyr, Barrick, who I was talking about, also very young. Alric, another very young guy in the Outlands. I was genuinely concerned that I was going to mess it up so that they could not get knighted young. And so for the first couple of years, I'm not a huge partier. I don't usually cause a lot of problems. Most people like me. I'm just nice. I don't like to be mean. It takes a lot of energy. But
quintessential cheerleader. Like that's not even a joke. He was a cheerleader in college, but like he's like the happy go lucky, like just wants everybody to have fun and do the right thing, and let me help you put up that tent and let me help you carry that. Like he is like everything sunshine and bubbly about this reign will be him. Like I'm way more serious and sarcastic and a little more dry. but
I think like it affected me a lot then. I think it affects me less probably now. Like I'm really excited to be crown, and for years, right? Like I've always been a pretty decent fighter, and I'm young and I'm athletic, so I was probably going to be a decent fighter anyhow. Kind of cheating by being young and athletic, but like, so for a long time, like even my nights, like just show up and win. Like how hard can it be, you know? And so I've just always had that, right? And then I finally win. It's like, okay, cool. And like, I'm super excited. And we've had honestly a lot of time to like really wind down, right? Like we are excited, but we're not trying to keep this hype up right now of like, we're going to be king and queen. Like eventually we will be, and then we'll be excited then. You know, but I think going in, like the weird part, especially being offered a laurel right before, is I didn't get to experience being a laurel before I got offered. And so I'm trying not to set too much like expectations in my head of like how I think things should be run or how circles should be done or that sort of stuff, you know, because I haven't been there yet, right? And so it would be, I'm excited to see like what comes of it and what the other side looks like.
Yeah.
It's very strange, and you guys have experienced this, and I only had a very tiny taste of it, but going to a peerage circle and not being a member of that peerage group is a really freaky, weird experience, especially when it's one you want to be in. And it's like this like weird peek behind the curtain that you don't, it's like I didn't want it, but I want it, but I didn't want it, but I want it, right? Like it's like I was so excited to be princess, but it's like I'm not supposed to be here. I haven't given this red belt back yet. What am I doing here? You know, but that's something else that was really important for our kingdom culture, was that I turn in my red belt for being crowned, and it was heart-wrenching. Like I'm tearing up just talking about it right now, because it was something that I never expected to do without all the trappings that came with it. And so, and by the way, happy birthday, Fran Bald. It's your birthday today. It was just like a really weird thing to do, but it was something that was unprompted, right? Like I knew as soon as he won that was going to come off for what I thought was 6 to 8 months. Turns out it's been a little while longer. I visited in the guest room. It's fine. But it's a very interesting thing to do, to sit in a peerage group. And so he's going to go into the laurel as a laurel, but you know, it's like he hasn't had a chance to be that laurel yet. It's going to be really interesting, I think, for him psychologically.
Both Eva and I, for their first reign, because they followed, Eva and Felix followed Henri and I, neither of us were peers for those reigns. So we walked in with no clue about peerage meetings. And Henri, who I reigned with, was not a peer either. He was unbelted.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
We were very lucky to have lots of friends.
Yeah, it's a weird mind trip that I don't think I understood what it was going to be like until we did it. And it's really weird because we've had, you know, this extra year to kind of dial thoughts in on stuff. And it's like, there's all these like great conversations I want to have now that I have this kind of captive platform of the chivalry about, you know, calibration conversations. And not that I think that our kingdom calibration is wrong. It's just, we're coming off of a year and however long break it's going to be, where for the most part, 90% of us haven't put on armor in that time, or if we did, it was very minimal. Unless you're lucky enough to have a significant other that fights in your household, you probably don't have a big pod of people that are fighting here. Mm-hmm. And so it's like I'm trying to figure out how to normalize that calibration conversation when we all come back. And I have like really good thoughts about it, and I've been bouncing it with our household group and some of our friends that are former crowns, and I think I have it dialed in. But it's still going to be such an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah. That does lead into. Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Bea.
I was just going to say, one of the other things that we have identified, because Lockup is back to events, is the concept of event fitness. Never thought event fitness would be a thing. A 2-day event is a killer.
Right.
It really is.
I leave my house for like 8 hours at a time, maybe, if I go into the office.
Yeah, and having to be like you going in your social, and because you're so excited to go back and do things and talk to people and do everything. Like we went to an event a few weeks ago for our crown tourney, and I was ready to come home after the first day, just exhausted.
Right
No,
now,
no
imagine
joke.
if-
I had to go to the physio when I got home because like we were so excited to fight people outside of our own group that we fought 2 solid days of pickups and then drove home, and it was like a 12-hour drive, and then like everything hurt so much that I had to go straight in to see my physiotherapist to be like, please fix everything.
everything hurts. The lead is not working anymore. Yeah, I can only imagine. It's like going to Penzic, you know, and it's like you walk 5 miles a day, you fight for 5 hours after, well, I mean, not melees, because melees take like an hour, but but the pickups afterwards are great. But it's, you know, it's so weird, like how much of a toll that you don't think about because you're so excited to do it, but then you come home and you need a vacation from your vacation. It's going to be twice as bad when we get back to SCAing.
It really
Thank you
is.
for being our test subjects on that, Lockhawk. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
You just keep dialing in those tips. By the way, guys, you forgot about this in the last hour. Maybe you should go for a walk.
So talking about fighting again, which is always very exciting for me, leads to a question I really want to ask, which is, I understand that you're both heavy combatants, which is very exciting. So is it very common to have martial queens in Atenveldt, or will you be a trendsetter?
I would say it is kind of like a 50-50, but even the martial queens that aren't will oftentimes at least go to the rapier side. We had this conversation between the two of us that I would stay a heavy combatant because that's where all kind of my goals right now are. And he has grown up fighting rapier, has the full kit, swords, like the whole 9 yards. So he's like ready to go, like doesn't even have to, you know, authorize for it or anything.
Nice.
I'm trying, yes, Yanka fought heavy. I'm trying to think of who else recently was a heavy fighter. But yeah, it's a if people are into whichever martial thing that they do coming in, it's common.
Yeah. And I
And
think
people love it. We always find here that everybody loves a martial queen. Are there any interesting like little traditions that go along with that when you go to war?
I'm gonna have a very like killer guard, that's for sure. I think my unit just got way more interesting. Our household is typically like the unit that will kind of like lurk in the back and then go and fill whatever. We're kind of the cleanup crew, and I think our cleanup crew just got a little bigger. But our household has had a handful of crowns in the last 5 years, so we're pretty good at being Estrella Reigns right now. So
Nice.
it'll be a lot of fun. There's just gonna be one more of us.
Yeah, and I don't know that we have any like real big traditions for like the queen fighting or anything like that. What I have found is the opposite direction of like, because I grew up doing fencing, I grew up doing archery, like I've done everything, and my knight was a really good example of that, and something that I always looked up to was like, he did everything. He knew all the people because he did everything. And so at Estrella, that was my goal, was like, I'm gonna do everything. And like she said, we talked about it. I'm like, go have fun, go do heavy. Like that's where your goals are. Like I just won crown. Like I'm on top of the world right now. Like I'm gonna go do everything else. I'm gonna shoot. I'm gonna.
Yeah, we both went to the archery field. We don't have an active equestrian community right now, but I'm sure if I took enough antihistamines, I might be able to touch a horse. I love them. They just don't love me back. But we are so heavily involved in all parts of the SCA that for us, it wasn't really a question of what events would we go to. Well, we go to all the events anyhow. So, we're just so excited.
Yeah, and there was like because usually the queen will pick up rapier, or at some point our fencing community has been very awesome about providing the queen gear. And so I think
Master Elzbieta is the custodian of the Queen's Rapier kit.
Yep.
As a Master of Defense, she is clearly very heavily involved in the rapier community. She herself is a 5 or 6 time queen, and so she holds that very dear, and also doesn't want anybody messing with her stuff. So So she holds on to that. It's her personal property, but
Yeah.
she loans it to each queen that chooses to fight rapier.
She did say I could use it, which
she
was
did
really
say
cool.
he could use it and that I could use it if we chose to both fight. So I'm sure my champion would love to see me on the field, and rapier community keeps sending me little messages. So I'm sure we'll figure something out. But as far as the big words go, I love melee and I love pickups, and I am so itching to get back to it.
Absolutely.
I can understand that. So we're nearly at the end of our time. Just I do have one more question for you. So we talked about what one of your favorite moments of the SCA were. What would be one of your proudest moments that you've experienced?
Proudest moments that I've experienced. I think for me, it's any time that I get to kind of be kind of a person that organizes or orchestrates people's good time. And so I love hosting our kingdom parties. And a couple of years ago, during one of our wettest Estrellas I've seen, we basically turned out, with the help of other people bartending and doing the thing, just this huge party underneath the pavilion. And I went up to the stage and I took a picture, and it's like you couldn't look at this picture of everybody laughing and having fun with drinks in their hands and being social and dancing or whatever it was, and know that 100 feet behind us there were like mudslog to your tent, like flooded people. But it's just so crazy what turns into like the little cocktail mixer, and you can basically pool resources with people and get your friends to take a bar chef. Thank you, Sean Glennie. And the Brotherhood of the Bengal and all the people that I kind of like bar managed into helping us. But those are my proud moments, where you take kind of that moment of adversity and you turn it into something that's joyful and just care for all your people. And I'm very, very fortunate that the groups that I'm involved in our household, Sine Nomine and the Brotherhood of the Bengal and the kingdom that I'm in, that we facilitate that kind of good time for the people around us. So those are my proud moments.
Oh man, I don't know. I guess that's a
well,
good
you
one.
can't say giving your brother a buffet, because
proudest moment right there. No,
and this is why I remember B from Penzic 2 years ago. Gotta start with.
I like her. Let's see. Like, I think I don't know, like one thing that is super cool to me is like the family that I've managed to surround myself with, and not just like my blood related family. I'm very, proud of the group of people that we hang out with, right? I know if my house is flowing and I'm on a trip or something, like I can call any of them at 2 a.m. and they'll show up at my house and fix the problem, right? Like there's just like, I fully trust the people that we hang out with. And I just adore the people we hang out with. But I think like if there were a really cool moment, I like having my dad be at the crown tournament that I won was a really cool, like, and realizing like what it took to win crown, like mentally for me, because I'm pretty humble. Like, I know that's weird to say, but I don't really think, like, when I imagine myself doing things a lot of times, I don't always succeed in my brain. And so like there was a really cool moment. Like my dad looked at me, right before going into the finals, who I had to fight this guy who is just a legend of a man. Like he's phenomenal. He's this older gentleman. I was like, I'm going to run away from him and he's going to get tired. That guy didn't get tired at all. And he kept swinging really hard at me, and it was terrifying.
Yeah. So we've actually coined the phrase like a full Newman, because Duke Mark hits like a truck, and he's a classic heater fighter that is also fast, which, not only is he very hard hitting, but he's quick about it, which is annoying. And he must have been just fighting 3 times a week before he came up to Crown, because it was kind of like that middle altitude where some people were feeling a little tired, and he had fought hard fights all day, because I watched a bunch of his fights, because he's a great fight to watch as well. And Mark never, like, he didn't have quit in him. At one point his shield strap had broke, and he still was trying to come at Nick Czypser.
Wow.
And Zip's like, whoa, you know, what's going on with your shield there? He's like, ah, broke. And he's like, don't you have another one here? Because that was like a fresh painted one. And he's like, yeah, I guess, yeah. So it was like someone went and got it, but it's like it was nuts.
But it, like, what was really neat is, like, my dad and I don't always like think the same way. I mean, in a lot of ways we do, but he deals with fighting and things very differently than I do. And there was something, like, he said to me, like, halfway through the day, he was like, you know, at some point you just got to decide, like, that it's your day and you're going to do it. Right. Or, you know, and I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, and in reality, like, you've just got to make the decision that you're going to make Mineko a princess. Like, today is the day. Like, you have to mentally make that choice. And I remember, like, fighting in the final round, and it was like 1-1, because we were doing 2 out of 3, and we had double killed once, and I'm tired, he's tired, and I'm sitting there, and I just went like, no, I'm totally gonna make her a princess, right? And, like, that was the first time I'd ever been able to, like, turn that switch on and just be like, no, I'm just gonna do it, right? And it was cool to me because, one, like, it was something my dad said that kind of inspired me, but at the same time, like, I think it was the first time that I was ever able to really use Mineko as an inspiration, and be able to just, like, no, like, I'm here for her just as much as I'm here for me, like, but I want to make her a princess. And, like, that is what was really cool to me, like, that is what it took for my brain to switch, right? It wasn't like, oh man, I practiced 1,000 flat snaps and I'm so good at flat snaps, right? It was really going like, no, like, that's the person that inspires me, like, that's who I want to make a princess. And that was just cool, like.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Your Highnesses. It was amazing to be able to have this chat with you and to get to know you.
Well, thank you for
You know,
hosting
it
us.
was really interesting when you guys asked for us to do this, because it's so weird. It doesn't feel like we've really had a chance to be Prince and Princess. Like, we've attended these online courts. We attended Estrella. There was one event after Estrella that was, you know, like our last event before everything kind of closed down. And it feels so strange to be in this holding pattern, but to know that, you know, people around us are still feeling joy for our hobby is really good to know. And I think us being able to have this opportunity to share how excited we are, it's like we got some populous banners from Valora, who's, you know, clearly the craftiest human alive, you know, behind us. And we got to have those suns hanging in our living room for an extra day, and, you know, kind of be these bright, shining people that we don't get to share with everybody right now. And it's been really nice to have people like you that are hosting these events to get to know people in your populace and across the known world, and have this opportunity. You know, we're kind of hyper social people, me more so than him. He's a little bit more of a homebody, stays closer to camp, but, you know, to have to bottle that up for the last year has been really bizarre for us. And we're very, very much looking forward to getting back. And we're so, like, proud to be Atenveldters and get the opportunity to serve our kingdoms, just as I'm sure you were when you served Lockcock, you know. And it's something that we can't wait to do. And visiting everyone is going to be fantastic, and it's going to be weird to see people in person.
And I totally am so stoked to meet you guys in person.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a couple
Fingers
of people.
crossed.
Yeah, and it's been a blast to talk with you guys, and thank you so much. And, like, even seeing pictures of Eva's rabbit is, like, the coolest thing to me.
I'm like, look, her bunny looks like our cat.
Yeah, like, there's a couple people on my list of, like, I need to meet these people in person, and there's you guys, and then there's Shakti and Rivkin. Like, those guys are freaking awesome. And, like, I've met a couple people online, like, even though I'm a little, like, anti-social on Facebook, like, I've met a couple people and I'm like, I just want to have thoughts with them, like, sit down and over a fire and, like, talk about art, or talk about random things, and like I want to see how their brain works in real life. And so like I'm stoked, and thank you for having us on your show.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're really glad that we were able to allow you to shine a little bit brighter in this time, especially when we're all cooped up at home. I can't wait to see photos from your reign. Good luck with everything. I hope everyone gets vaccinated very quickly and you get to have a lot of fun in the near future.
Yes, big same. We are very, very hopeful that we can figure out what we need to do to all join
I
up
want to
again.
be like you guys.
Yes.
Everyone
I
wants to
wish,
be like Lockhart.
right? Like the fact that, both of Lockhart being New Zealand and Australia, that you guys were able to, two countries, figure your crap out and you can all hang out amongst each other. But it's phenomenal to see the countries that did it right.
I think they're trying to kick us off.
They are trying to kick us off. We've kept them over 10 minutes. Take that.
We appreciate the platform to keep talking. Like that's that. We're just ramblers.
If I am correct, we have another interview coming up next Saturday. Beatrice and myself will be sitting down to talk to Duke Sean, who is on Coach's Corner, and Sir Joel from Grace Under Pressure. So we'll talk to everybody else then.
It's going to be a bit of an insane interview, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe a little, but I'm sure there'll be some good nuggets in there. Sean and Joel are both very interesting people.
Joel's, I've known him since I was like pretty little. He like gave me a cool axe one time, so.
It's okay. After the interview, we'll hear some stories.
All right.
Thank you very much to everybody who's watched today. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel, Crown Between Two Roses, and we hope to see you online next week. Thank you very much. Bye.